Okay, so what are the conditions that were not being met?
Well, there's a whole raft of them. I mean, and they're pretty harsh. The IMF wanted Sierra Leone to cut rice subsidies, fuel subsidies. It wanted to eliminate many so-called discretionary waivers on import taxes, so to push up the prices of imports, essentially, to impose a 20% import tax on imported vehicles worth more than 25.
You know, guys, you just listened to the headlines. That was BBC back in January 2018, 31st January 2018, when they reported about what happened, you know, when IMF suspended funds to Sierra Leone during the presidency of former President Koroma. Guys, you know, when you get President with a Koroma, former President Koroma, IMF tell them for say, you have to increase the price of rice. You have to increase the price of fuel. You have to increase the tax for importation of goods and services that our country did. He said no, because he cared about these people. Look at that. Contrast that to Marabio, President Bio now. We don't add 6,000 leones per fuel price since he became president. 6,000 leones, that's how much he has added since he became president of Sierra Leone to fuel. Under 4 years, President Koroma was 10 years in power. He increased fuel by only 2,000 some change. 2,000 leones some change. He only increased in 10 years, added only 2,000 to the price of fuel. And that was even for austerity measures because we had to manage. Well, now this interview from the BBC, January 31st, 2018, exonerates President Koroma. It showed a stark difference between this president and that of this one. You know, this President Marabio and that of former President Koroma. Kumrahat na former President Koroma begets. You know, grief for increased price. It fall out with IMF. It fall out with EU. It fall out with all of these organizations just because it did not want to increase the burden on the people of Sierra Leone. Listen to the rest of this BBC interview. Guys, this is why people like us will not sit back and tolerate this nonsense. When you have people like Kande Yumkela in parliament, he knows about all of these things. This government has increased price of fuel by 6,000 leones. Kande Yumkela has never come out now and organized a massive civil protest, a civil disobedience to call out this government for this nonsense. But yet he said he had what it takes to bring change in Sierra Leone. Some people, these are the realities, and we have to stand up and speak up about this when you see this truth. President Koroma decided not to increase the price of fuel on the people of Sierra Leone. It cushioned the burden. It subsidized fuel. It subsidized education. It subsidized rest. Today, the price of rice is 500,000 plus more. That it depends on the kind of rice you want for buy. People, average salary is about 500,000 to 600,000, but the price of rice is almost more than their salary. Tell me how these people are surviving. President Bio has not subsidized anything since he came to power. Salon people. But it's been a while I haven't done one of these videos. I just wanted to do this. So listen to the rest of the interview. So this is former President Koroma was a blessing to Sierra Leone. You know, and we hope and pray that we could continue to get leaders them after 2023, because we're going to kick out the SLPP. But after 2023, we are praying that we'll get leaders. We could take after former President Koroma and execute that country to follow people and life improve.
Revealed that the International Monetary Fund has suspended loan payments after the government broke the conditions for their disbursement. Some of those conditions would have led to increases in prices for rice and fuel, making the government very unpopular ahead of an election which is due in March. Patrick Smith is the editor of Africa Confidential, the publication that broke the story.
Ahead of the elections in Sierra Leone in March, it seems a big row has broken out between the government and the International Monetary Fund. The IMF signed a deal with the Sierra Leone government last year for $224 million. And that was premised on a group of pretty tough economic conditions. And by the end of the year, the IMF suspended its payments to the government, saying that it wasn't fulfilling the conditions. And the suspicion is that the government simply needed the first tranche to sort of bulk up the treasury, and then it announced a populist budget, which didn't meet any of those conditions, and has kind of engineered this crisis to help it out ahead of the elections.
How much money is involved?
It's a total of $224 million in the IMF loan. But that's going to be made available over a 4-year period. So initially, they got about $50 million for the first tranche of that.
So potentially $50 million might be being misused.
It's not so much misused as the IMF are saying, well, you signed on to this deal, but you didn't meet the conditions. So are you really serious about the deal, or is it just convenience ahead of the elections? Because it was a sort of contribution to the Treasury, if you like.
Okay, so what are the conditions that were not being met?
Well, there's a whole raft of them. I mean, and they're pretty harsh. The IMF wanted Sierra Leone to cut rice subsidies, fuel subsidies. It wanted to eliminate many so-called discretionary waivers on import taxes, so to push up the prices of imports, essentially, to impose a 20% import tax on imported vehicles worth more than $25,000, which is most vehicles these days. And the government wasn't having that. Certainly the idea of removing subsidies on rice and fuel 3 months ahead of an election is going to be politically explosive. All this has come out because one of our correspondents saw the contents of a confidential dispatch from the U.S. Embassy in Freetown to headquarters in Washington. And this dispatch claimed that relations between the government of Ernest by Koroma and the IMF had reached absolute rock bottom.
And the reason for that was that the IMF was saying, we're not giving you any more money.
Yeah, they've suspended the loan to Sierra Leone, and they want to have further negotiations about what conditions the government is prepared to keep to resume funding.
So has this been confirmed with the IMF? Have they told you that they've done that?
The IMF are absolutely stum. They announced that the credit was being suspended, but they're not getting into, as far as their talks with journalists are at least, they're not getting into the reasons for this. Just say they're having an ongoing dialogue with the government, and that's it.
And the government itself, have they said anything?
No, they haven't reacted yesterday. The story came out, and we've had a lot of reaction from civil society in Sierra Leone, but nothing from the government yet, not a denial or an affirmation so far. I mean, it's a matter of fact that the loan is suspended, but the reasons for it haven't been discussed by the government yet.
And your report says that the EU is also withholding funds. Is that the case?
That's right. The EU has also taken issue with the Koroma government on a number of policy matters, mainly to do with accountability and transparency of the funds coming in from the EU. So it seems that there's quite a lot of Western pressure on the Koroma government ahead of these elections at the moment. Of course, Koroma himself has chosen his own foreign minister, Samu Kamara, as his candidate for the elections. And I suppose the feeling is he wants to put him in the best possible economic position to win those elections. And he's not going to do it if he starts cutting subsidies on vital commodities or putting up taxes ahead of the election.
That's Patrick Smith, editor of Africa Confidential, and we're hoping to hear from the Sierra Leonean government in the next edition of Focus on Africa. Coming up,
former President Koroma was a blessing to Sierra Leone, and we hope and pray that we could continue to get leaders them after 2023, because we're going to kick out the SLPP. But after 2023, we are praying that we'll get leaders. We could take after former President Koroma and execute that country, develop people, and life improve. Thank you, everybody. Ibrahim. Bye-bye.